seems like the the process of enlightenment is, well, as we discussed yesterday in that video, being undone by the heart's bliss, the whole thing is a gigantic yes and a gigantic no, and it's...
No, the whole thing is nothing. That's both the problem and the point.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing is actually nothing. So, and as was also indicated yesterday and repeatedly stated throughout the teachings here, nothing to prevent you from entering true heart practice. There's nothing there. So if one needs to know that enlightenment is native to our being, and perhaps even what we could call true value of life and appreciation for the universe and everything in general, then there's this possibility of opening to what that is in fact. And the dissolution of, or the evaporation of, resistance to bigness, to the heart's space, which is ever present, actually. It's always here. It doesn't go anywhere. It can't. It's everywhere and nowhere at the same time. So it could be stated that many people just don't know that they can be enlightened, or that enlightenment is just a thought away, perhaps. A breath away, an impulse away. And so then we have to reflect upon the evolution process, human evolutionary process. Development into what? Culture? As what? Enlightenment? No, not quite. At best, a step towards the need for, or the urge towards enlightenment. Liberation, then. Enlightenment, liberation. And since people don't have a real sense of what liberation is, except in the smallest terms possible, having the freedom to speak, having the freedom to ride your bike or drive a car, having the freedom to walk around without getting your head blown off. Liberties. The freedom to feel. These are very fundamental. But again, in the evolutionary scheme of things, it's a baby step on the path to heart space. Baby step here, a little speck of earth, boom. You have the universe here. There's the difference of enlightenment. Dot to the grand magnificence of the incomprehensible hugeness, vastness of what is. Enlightenment is the happiness of the what is. So what does one need to do, and how do you get to that place where you're ready to get to the edge of the canyon, the Grand Canyon or something, and get a better sense of earth space relative to space. So, wow, that's me. I am that. It's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's great. That's a question. We can also add the topic of ripeness. that enables us to get to a point where we see that our own self-thinking is the problem. Why am I thinking about that? Where'd that come from? Who gave me that idea? What impressed me to think that way? Because that way is not the way that I really need to think when I think about it. Somebody else's thought. And we're talking then about culturing, which then can be seen as the problem, if you will, for some. For others, it's not culture, it's self. Self-obstruction. I am. I am, comma. I am blood, family, person, role, all of this. And if you're at that stage where you have to believe that and know that is your truth, your reality, and your limit, well, you have a ways to go. I'm not going to say that's bad. We hope it's just a step on the path. And when all of that is collapsed and exhausted, when you don't have an I am standing in your way, even when you say, I am the greatest, and so on and so forth, right? I am God, right? I am spirit, I am this, that, whatever. That fades away. And you are nothing. That openness, that acknowledgement is enlightened. It's nothing but everything then. It's a nothing of everything. We get to the concept of emptiness, radiance, as a step towards realizing enlightenment, or as I call it, ensoundment. Say, hearing beyond hearing, beyond words, beyond seeing, beyond perception, hearing beyond perception, being the ear itself. Being is bliss. But if you don't know that, you may not know bliss. If you are being programmed to feel you are infinitely less than blissfulness, that you are a man, a woman who likes clothes, who likes colored clothes, who likes jewelry, or things here, terrestrial things, material things, that might not be equal to bliss and blissfulness. And that implies the full radiance of the sun from your heart and your brain core. Blissfulness. Profound blissfulness. Which is then the soul quality itself, unimpeded by shielding and imposition of data and phenomena that's contrary to its quality and its reality, and thus functions as an obstruction or an endarkening rather than an enlightening function. See? Enabling the light to be what it is in fullness, which everyone is potentially, but not everyone is willing to be the freedom which that demands of you, to be free of limitation programming and open to the zeroness and fullness of radiance, unimpeded, just being itself.
And does that sort of paranoia, that
phobia,
that
fear of freedom,
does that come from anywhere in particular in anybody's case, or is there a sort of magnetic field on Earth?
Well, there's of course an encompassing, protective magnetic field on the Earth as there is around everybody. But that field is dictated often, more often than, or is dictatable. We can dictate to it. See? By the mind. The mind can control that. Yeah. We're not talking just about your self-mind. Self-mind may not know anything about anything and is satisfied with the limitation it created for itself. Right. And it thinks that by, this is ordinary thinking, that by having a self-mind, well then you're protected, you're okay. Right? You kind of like cover up your fear. You think that the limitations are safety programs. Well, they are fear programs, plain and simple. They're created of fear to obstruct happiness. Mm-hmm. They stand in the way. Disappeared or burnt, happiness arises of itself. It's already there. The enlightenment is already part of our endowment. See? This is proven by practitioners. And people who walk the desert, fasting, and realizing two things. They're becoming physically weaker, but more spiritually radiant, which is a paradox. The lighter they are, this is true to natives who have to go on their vision quest. The lighter they are by being less fulfilled materially, the higher their intelligence and consciousness, their perception, the subtlety. Problem is you have to feed the body for the bodies to continue surviving. So there's a balance to be met there. But the proof is there. That less is more relative to enlightenment. Less karma is more relative to freedom and liberation. Less obstruction, less heaviness, less gravities, more levity. Very simple equation. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So there are conditions that can be created or are created for humans. Yeah. That enable you to have this insight. Animals fast when they're sick. They don't eat for their recovery. That's instinctual. It's not like they have to see a doctor or anything about it. So, it just automatically happens, but not in the case of self-indulging human beings, which are a different kind of machine. So that's the negative side of mind over matter. Because you're polluting yourself, polluting your body, polluting your mind with data, information, and knowledge that does not apply to the enlightenment process directly. You're not taught that in school. You don't go to kindergarten to learn about enlightenment. The word doesn't ordinarily arise unless you're in some kind of Dharma school or something, where enlightenment is the whole point. Enlightenment as happiness and joyousness is the whole point. It's already there. Once you stop beating yourself up, hitting yourself over the head with a hammer of self-thought. And so all the retreats that we know about in the world are attempts or maybe baby steps towards the cessation of self-indulgent, destructive, obstructing. And then that relaxed or let go of or put aside enables you to be distracted by the Dharma of simplicity and stillness, and you start seeing light in yourself. You start saying, hey, I'm not all this suffering after all. Wow, I'm relaxed now. I'm opening. This is not, genius. This is common sense. Create space and let whatever needs a space realize itself.
And I think many people are quick to create excuses for themselves because they feel as though they're not ready for whatever it might be. So, I need to hold on to this or that, or this thought process, or this situation, or this relationship, or something like that.
They're not even thinking that much. That's already happening. They're already in the jaws of obsession, in the jaws of desire as machinery that is made real. Because you have an aching in your stomach, your gut for this kind of food, which is a dumb program. There's nothing intelligent or civilized about it. It's just an instinct of hunger, maybe a perversion of it, or like people who need candy and cake and things like that. See? Sugar. Same thing. It darkens the process, makes you feel heavier, sick, disoriented, confused, out of whack. And it needs balance, correction. Sometimes we need knowledge and wisdom or science to help us realize what's at stake or what's at risk relative to our sanity or health. Mental and otherwise, emotional health. Some people are prone to have wicked nightmares, horrific nightmares. They may not know anything about that in their conscious state. But then they go to dreaming and they have this like, science fiction nightmares. So, from the unconscious, which is its own reality, its own realm, its own Lord, right? Lords over a very large segment of human beings. The negative and reactive unconscious rules. Violence, anger, self-division, stupidity, ignorance, racism. It's all part of this disease of the negative reactive unconscious, which is based upon original fear, paranoia, not intelligence, not spirituality, not wisdom, but paranoia, fear of other, right? Addiction to other, but fear of other at the same time. So, superficiality. Racism is superficiality. It's a program. Superficiality. For those who have a crisis of the heart and deal with tragedy, or a certain level of tragedy that awakens your heart, that often happens in combat. Right? You come in with your huge ego trip, blum, 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 you're the right G.I. Joe mentality, male or female. Then all of a sudden your body is taken down, and you weren't ready for that. Right? The only friend you ever had is taken down, right? And is dying there, helpless, bleeding to death. And you're the only one around them. Your whole self-illusion dissolves, or it can. And you can break down into a state of real compassion, not just for your body and yourself, but for all humanity, which is, your body. Your heart opens. See? Beyond subjectivity, beyond personality, your heart opens because that's its real nature. See, allowed to be the expanse it actually is and the truth it is. See, the love it is, see, you see it for what it is. And then you know the truth. And you might think, well, how the hell did I get to this situation anyway? How could we put ourselves in a situation where we're destroying each other, like as if we're just meat? Well, stupidity. It's called enlightenment phobia, worst case scenario. In this spiritualist tradition that I hail from, according to my family practitioners, which were all good people, there's nothing fake about them. Okay, they were basically probably considered more in terms of Christian healers, believers in Jesus' healing power. That's the great healer and deliverer and so on. And they did healing. Well, they did healing more or less by good intention, and sometimes the not laying on of hands, but using the hands for purification processes. See, in terms of traditional native cleansing techniques. Brushing away astral and psychic gunk from the body, which can't see the ganglions. They're there. They have to be moved and pushed around. That's understood by the natives, who sometimes preoccupy a different state of consciousness. They can see things so materialized people can't see. Right, so they work from that belief experience.
Does the attachment...
Now that doesn't upgrade your intelligence. I won't move you to another level. That's a basic clearing. But like that clearing, we need to clear ourselves from the debris of over-conditioning relative to unenlightened data, unenlightenment information, or culturing. Yeah. So we have to, in our practice, I'm not saying as seekers, but as purifiers, right? As enlightening beings, right? Sweep away the karma of the world to see more clearly as to who we are and what we're here to do more seriously, directly. Yeah. And being true to the doctrine of the spiritualists, you're born, often people are born into this life or life in general, in one part of the universe or other, because they are aware of there being many, many planets, many levels of beings, and that is all-inclusive, not excluding what is called aliens or star people. Right? We are star people. This is our star. The Earth is a certain kind of blue star planet. We're here. This is not all there is. To think it is, it's egotism that is absurd. Okay? And we start with the low spirit energy, darkness, not knowing. So it's not even thinking. You're coming out of animal, native earth instinct. And that is smart in some ways and stupid in other ways. The animal is sharp, absolutely sharp and clear from its instincts, survival instincts. We have that. But that's not who we are. That's a stage of our evolution towards the angelic. You start with a low spirit, you become a middling spirit. That means a productive spirit, a serious, responsible spirit, who is kind enough and compassionate enough to have a family and raise people and teach people at a fundamental level, good principles and good judgment, right? Maybe even moral training, if that's part of the mix there. Being a wise person, being good, coming to the point of, doing good creates good, right? Good karma. Do unto others what you would have done to yourself. This is sort of good religious training at the middling level of it. It's common sense. Okay. But there are other levels where the being itself knows what it needs to do. So often what we have in the universe, and particularly on Earth, is you have higher beings who are not even incarnated. They're spiritual beings. Angels, people get used to the idea. There are angels, there are subtle entities. There's no question about it. Just like Joe Blow and all these people who accept it as the reality. Well, go to the next level and you see that subtle beings are also part of that reality, and they are everybody as well. Don't believe it. You see it when you're evolved enough, then you will see it. That's understood. When you're evolved enough intellectually, you can get a master's degree or PhD. Okay? When you're evolved enough, when you're ready. And a lot of good people pray all the time. And they go to churches. They go to the mosque. They go to synagogue. They pray. Good people, heart people. All the same, hoping that the God and the angels and the spirits help them and their families to be better and do well out here. No doubt. But there are different levels beyond that. So you can't judge the universe by your own sort of like pipsqueak level of reality. There's no God in that. There's no realization in that. Because the word that is better suited to describe some of this is infinity. Come on.
Is evolution toward enlightenment consciousness on a separate track than the sort of technical evolution towards space travel?
We can't say it's the same thing. The example I just gave you, million years ahead of us. We don't have a technical evolutionary cycle worth talking about right now. But the spiritual cycle is separate. Anyone can be enlightened at any point. We're talking about not going to that space, but recovering our sense of the sacred space of your awareness. Already, perfectly sacred space, clear. Yeah. Already. Here now. From that space, then you could evolve, let's say, depending on your karma, through mathematics, technology, and do many things, because you're liberated enough, open enough, liberated, free enough, to do whatever you feel you want to do for the sake of humanity or yourself. That's needed. So it's enlightenment first. See? Source is enlightenment already. Original light is already the case. Everything else is after the fact and relative. Million years, a trillion years ahead of Earth beings. Forget about it. It's inconceivable. And then we're talking about light beings. Come on now. We're already in the angelic and the spiritual realms. See? So we don't have to do that. Wait a million years. We're already like a million miles higher than we are in spirit. Consider that.
In Tibet, the reincarnations of serious beings are located and found and brought to monasteries very young. Is there an advantage to starting at that age in this very kind of this training that is pointed towards the kind of clearing out of all this stuff? Is there an advantage to starting prior to accumulation?
That is to make up for past reincarnations. That's how you make up for it. See? So it's not to let the present river of blood, family karma, get in the way of the process. See? So the best way to bypass that is catch the child when it's very young. See? According to my mother, who we have on video, as Satchanami speaks, she said that I was given my first pair of bongos at 2, and I started playing then. Yeah. So my view of that would be that I was not as polluted at that point yet. I hadn't heard by 2 years old all the thousands of no, you can't, you better not, boom, 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 nonsense. I didn't hear that. And I distinctly remember as a child drummer that I would escape. As soon as the fights would start and the noise would come up, I'd go to the drums. I'd say, yeah, this is what I wanted to hear. This is my healing. This is music to my ears, an escape from my family karma, right? Their culture, their self-conflictive, self-divided culturing, say arguing, fighting, drinking, smoking, carrying on. No, salvation was there. See, so I was already carving a path that was parallel to where they are, and here I am, and I don't know where they are right now. As far as their willingness to be free of culture. So the drums were my salvation in this time. These 2 little drums started it. See? Beep boop, beep boop, beep boop, beep boop, beep boop, boop boop, beep boop, beep boop, beep boop, boop boop. See? Drums. Time. See? Tone. So you have the perfect time, perfect timing. Then you have, in terms of melody, you have perfect pitch. See? When you have perfect harmony, you have different levels of perfection. Perfect melody. Not just pitch, but melody. So you have perfect pitch from the memory, but you have perfect melody from the heart. Perfect melody is related to the tragedy and quality of sorrow of the soul. So it's pure, soulful. Soulfulness. Soulfulness. I call it super soul. At the level of jazz, it's super soulfulness, which includes a cosmic element. It's not just melodies, then. It's a cosmic stream of melodies. And that's the beginning point. So to start early can be a way of bypassing a lot of culture and experience that could be an impediment to your purpose. So starting the Tulkus early, just as I started early, and I drew musicians to me as a child because of what I was doing, can be an advantage. Not in everyone's case, because the fact that you exist means that your blood is being extended. Now you are a representation of the ancestry to a certain degree. Hopefully in the process of your evolution in time, through time and space, you awaken beyond that line, see, of evolving, maybe even suffering souls, right? Move beyond that so you can start seeing what it is in truth. Not in blood, but you have to see what it is in truth, not in blood. Blood is blindness. See, it's power, but it's blindness. See, it's too much emotion and tragedy, and that's why music is good, because you can express the beauty of sorrow and tragedy through music, which becomes a bind then, and a gravitational force. You can express it, but you need to get beyond it. And because of its emotional gravity and beauty, which is art, right? Sadness of expression, we need to express the space between the music. See? That's also what we are. We are the no music, or we are all sound. So we go from musical structure, sorrowful melodies, to the fact of its source, which is all sound, beyond which is all silence, beyond which is clear sound.